Hello, folks. This is Atilla Yeşilada, broadcasting for Real Turkey channel. I'm sorry for missing my weekly contribution to the YouTube quagmire last week because I was in London visiting financial institutions to tell them that Turkey is bankrupt and is about to implode. They wouldn't believe me because they think it has done so 10 years ago under Mr. Erdogan's leadership. And since then, I've become catatonic because there is just so much to cover and I have to focus my energies on one subject. For instance, will Erdogan's primary rival in the next presidential race, CHP Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, be banned from politics by a completely fictitious crime of insulting election officials? Will there be early elections? Mehmet Şimşek has promised an economic soft landing in his New York conferences with major global fund managers. Is he dreaming? Is soft landing possible? Oh, at the end, I have decided on something that's more scandalous and that's more magazine worthy. New York City Mayor Eric Adams being indicted on charges of corruption. The indictment largely covers his unethical relationship with Turkish business people to curry favors. He allegedly received incredible amount of gifts, free mileages, discounts at luxury hotels, and made Turkey his second home. Why? Because he forced the fire department to give the Turkish house, the consular building in New York City, an occupancy permit, even though the building wasn't safe. That's the silliest kind of corruption or graft that I've heard. But anyhow, opening the subject with Eric Adams, I want to take a look at the Turko-American relationship much closer because whoever the next president will be will going to be facing a lot of issues, unfinished business that he needs to resolve with Turkey. Turko-American relationship, once one of the closest in the region alongside of Israel and US, has frayed over the years, so much so that now several Western think tanks are debating loudly whether NATO should be kicked out. All of these issues will be answered in the term of the next president. It makes a huge difference whether that person is Ms. Kamala Harris or Mr. Donald Trump. Let's start with Eric Adams, but sort of to warm me up to the subject, let me tell you what a real corruption scandal is. That's how things are done in Turkey. In the United States, Fed regulates financial institutions, banks mainly, investment and commercial banks, and Securities and Exchange Commission regulates capital markets instrument and agents. In Turkey, there is a regulatory authority called BRSA, which regulates banks. Sometimes the central bank plays a role in that too. Nevertheless, never mind, the vice president of BRSA decided to marry last week, and he sent invitations to the CEOs of all major banks, allegedly specifying what kind of gifts he expects. Now, this is, if you're looking for open corruption and soliciting bribery, this is as good as it gets anywhere in the world. It might be worse in Egypt or some African countries, but then again, we're supposed to be more advanced. So compared to that kind of indifference and impunity to anti-corruption laws, poor Eric Roberts, I don't know the guy. I don't know if New Yorkers like him or not. He may have other unethical relationships, but he received in-kind gifts, which would constitute graft and corruption, from at least 5 Turkish business people. Some of them have links to the Erdogan administration in return for, granting an occupancy permit to Turkevi or Turkish house, a 38-story high skyscraper, which is also the consular building. He might have also issued permits to another Turkish skyscraper in New York City, the Turkfen house, but that is yet to be added to the indictment. This is an embarrassing case for Turkey, clearly. However, whether it would lead to a sanctionable act is unclear. Opposition press in Turkey claims that the bribes and gifts were given with the explicit order of Erdogan, or Erdogan actually knew about what was happening, even though Ankara officially denied all these allegations. As I've said, I'm not an expert on American law, but to the extent I've been able to investigate, it is a crime to bribe American officials, and if the culprits are caught, they will also be punished. But what can you do against governments? I mean, Bob Menendez, a senator in Turkey known for his hatred of anything Turkish and his love of everything Greek, has been caught red-handed, and he has been censured and sanctioned in the Senate. But as far as I know, America hasn't really deployed any sanctions against Greece. So I think that's the end of the case. Nevertheless, I'll do my homework better next week if the story dominates the headlines of the international press. New York Post, I think, put up a great headline like Ottoman crime spree in New York, or Turkey spreads corruption beyond her borders, which is certainly true. Let's go to more substantive issues. Let me give you a list of outstanding differences of opinion or conflicts between Turkey and the United States. The most well-known is the American presence in northeast Syria to defend the region against ISIS terror network, along with their ruling Kurdish entity PYGYPD. These folks are closely linked with terror organization PKK, but I will not go as far as saying they are one and the same. And I will not go as far as saying this Kurdish entity, political military entity, is a terror organization. It seems to have genuine support from the region's majority, the Kurdish ethnic group in Syria. Nevertheless, for Turkey, it is PKK. And when Syria pulls out, Turkey is going to march into northeast Syria to subjugate these poor people and take over their lands. This happened in Afrin, another Syrian canton in northwest Syria, where hundreds of thousands of Kurds have been abused and kicked out of their homes in one of the most significant ethnic cleansing cases of the 21st century. So obviously, after what happened in Afghanistan, which really embarrassed Biden, United States wants to make sure to arrange a peaceful exit without Turkey rolling over the poor Kurds. Turkey is insistent that YPG, PYD must be completely disarmed, which is disingenuous because they're also defending their land against the Assad's Syrian army, as well as other nefarious organizations governed by Iran. And certainly ISIS is becoming a problem once again. The second issue that needs to be sorted out is, if you see my past videos, it's sort of like a never-ending headache for Turkey, the Halkbank trial. Halkbank is implicated in the infamous Reza Zarraf Iran money laundering scheme. Reza Zarraf claims he has laundered more than 20 billion of Iran funds through Asian intermediaries and Turkish intermediaries in contravention of UN and American sanctions. And Halkbank allegedly is one of the main conduits of this money laundering. The case has gone all the way to the Supreme Court, kicked down to the Federal Appeals Court of Second District of New York, I believe, and then the news flow stopped. There is no trial date scheduled as far as I know. Nevertheless, a lot of experts commented when the issue was hot that Halkbank is liable to be found guilty and it may have to pay fines up to $9 billion, which is a huge sum, which would bankrupt Halkbank, which is a state institution. Moreover, this is a sanctionable case against Ankara because Halkbank is a state bank, and obviously Mr. Erdogan, the then prime minister, and other ministers knew what was going on. The final issue which emerged, not the final, but the third issue that emerged recently is American rapprochement with the Greek Cypriot Administration, which, with the exception of Turkey, the entire world calls Cyprus Republic. We don't recognize their sovereignty over the island. We have our own runaway republic in the north called Northern Turkish Republic of Cyprus. So anyhow, Pentagon and the Greek Cypriots have signed a preliminary agreement to advance military cooperation, which Turkey read as United States either building an Air Force base in Greek Cyprus and or selling advanced weapons to Greek Cypriots, since the animosity between two nations is a never-ending story that, of course, alarms Turkey. And the new president of the United States will have to sort that issue out too. Let's get to the most important part of this video. It's a letter and number salad, so bear with me. The S-400s versus F-35 jet fighter swap deal. Some background is necessary. One reason I don't do more videos is there is just so much explaining before I even get to the subject. And I haven't really mastered the art of just skipping over these in a way that would interest the general audience. Turkey, it has been 10 years, I believe, has decided that she needs to bolster her air defenses against missile attacks and both Russian-made S-400 anti-missile systems, which turned out to be completely useless in Ukraine. And even more stranger is the fact that the only nations that have missiles which can strike Turkey are Iran and Russia, who happen to be close Turkey allies. So why did we buy these S-400s? I have no idea. But for this crime, United States Congress slapped the CAATSA sanctions, combating adversaries of America through Sanctions Act, which means we were no longer eligible for most advanced weapons purchases, and we were kicked out of the F-35 jet fighter program. Our involvement in the F-35 jet fighter program wasn't limited to purchasing several squadrons of the new planes, but also Turkish air defense industry would produce several parts for F-35s priced at $9 billion in those days dollars. So it was a completely lucrative deal, and Turkish military has only aging F-16 third generation fighters. It's manufacturing a domestic jet fighter called Kaan. What else? I wish they would call it Atilla, which is even a more assertive and macho name. I wrote to the presidency, but I received no answer. So anyhow, Kaan, if it ever flies successfully, will not join the inventory of Turkish armed forces until mid-1930s, and until then we may need new jet planes. So at the beginning of this year, the American Department of let me start again. I am sorry. The American Department of State officially let it be known that if Turkey were to send the S-400s to another country or turn its control over to an American officer, Turkey will be readmitted to the F-35 jet fighter program. Turkey has so far not agreed to this offer, but according to Katemirini newspaper in Greece, negotiations are fairly advanced. Turkey will not only be offered a return to the F-35 jet fighter program, but also CAATSA sanctions will be lifted ASAP. That obviously is a huge deal for Turkey, which still procures a lot of military equipment from the United States and the rest of the Western world. Nevertheless, Ankara probably will not cut a deal with the outgoing Biden administration and simply stake her hopes on Trump winning. I have shot several videos on that in the near past. Erdogan and Trump has a relationship which is akin to the Trump-Putin bromance, probably not as close, but with one exception, Trump has consulted Erdogan on matters that involve our geography, like the Caucasus or the Middle East. In his recent visit to New York City, Erdogan didn't see either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, which is probably wise. Turkey doesn't want to take an official position on the American presidential race. But if Trump wins, I think Turkey will accept the latest offer, as reported by Katemirini of the State Department, which is to ship S-400s to NATO Incirlik airbase in Turkey, where some NATO officer would hold the keys to activating them. So that's a face-saving solution for Turkey, which has no use for S-400s. And in return, it gets F-35 jet fighters, CAATSA sanctions are lifted, and other gratuities can be expected. So this is the state of Turko-American relationship. There are several upside and downsides here for the economy. As I've said, Erdogan was recently in New York City. He has gathered several major multinational businesses to attract foreign direct investment in Turkey. He continued his efforts in Turkey over the weekend, hosting several multinational companies and urging them to invest in Turkey. Turkey is investable because it's close to major markets for Western companies like the Middle East and EU, and has a relatively well-educated engineer class, software developers, etc., and cheap labor costs, but it has no rule of law, which is a major issue for most multinationals. See Eric Adams' case. Nevertheless, one would assume that if the presidents of two countries are friendly, the friendshoring concept of shifting some supply chains and new manufacturing facilities to friendly countries would also apply to Turkey. So see, there is a major upside in Turkish relations if Trump is reelected. I'm not gonna make a call on that election. Neither am I gonna take sides, but I will be awaiting the results with bated breath. I want to thank you for watching my tiny channel. In London too, I met at least 2 investors who watch my channel, which makes me really proud and compels me to continue my effort despite the tiny audience. So please send your comments. They please me very much and they encourage me to broadcast more videos. Have a good weekend. This is Atilla Yeşilada saying goodbye from Istanbul.